Welcome back. China will hold a military parade in early September to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War. History must not be forgotten, but what should we remember and what lessons must we learn? More importantly, what must we do today to ensure such tragedies are never repeated? Let's continue our discussion with our guest speakers. So, Victor, we know that on September the 3rd, actually, a key part of the commemoration is a military parade in Beijing. In addition to the latest generation of conventional weapons, the parade will display unmanned intelligence systems, underwater combat units, cyber and electronic forces, and hypersonic weapons. So, what is the message of the military parade?
Thank you. I think according to the publicly available information, the parade on September the 3rd in Beijing will probably be the largest and one of the most important military parade in history. China will showcase some of its best military hardwares, including drones of all kinds and other very sophisticated weaponry. In order to promote peace, in order to prevent any outbreak of war against China or outbreak of war in other parts of the world. And I think the fact that many other global leaders will gather in Beijing to celebrate this victory will be very meaningful. Now, for China, as far as China is concerned, the war of resistance against Japanese aggression was not for 4 years. It was for a long period of 14 years, ever since 1931, when Japan invaded parts of China and gradually they occupied up to about half of the landmass and they closed off all the Chinese coastlines. I think for the Chinese civilization, the Japanese aggression of China between 1931 to 1945, when Japan unconditionally surrendered, was truly one of the most important challenges that the Chinese civilization faced. And by getting united against such foreign aggression, Chinese nation demonstrated once again to itself as well as to the world that China is not going to surrender to such acts of aggression, and China can unify against such foreign aggression, leading towards the ultimate victory. Now, the Chinese war of resistance against Japanese aggression was a very important integral part of what we call the Asian Pacific War against Japanese fascists, jointly with the United States since the bombing of Pearl Harbor in December 1941. So we fought at different historical periods, including fighting more or less alone against the Japanese aggressors between 1931 to 1941, and then serving as allies of the United States in the Asian Pacific theater against Japanese aggressions. I think the lesson we have learned is that China cannot be weak anymore. China needs to be strong. China needs to be always prepared for acts of aggression by any country in the world. On the other hand, it further strengthens China's determination to defend the peace, because only by being strong militarily can we maintain peace, not only for China's sake, but for mankind's. So, by celebrating the 80th year victory of the war against Japanese aggression, which is also part of the very important military campaign in the Asian Pacific region against the Japanese fascists, this is the best time to showcase China's strength, the strength of the Chinese military, and the Chinese nation's determination of never allowing any foreign country to set their military boots on China, to invade China, to oppress the Chinese nation. And by doing so, China will prove once again as one of the most important forces for defending peace in the world. That is what we are going to celebrate on September the 3rd in Beijing.
Yes. Warwick, the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression, as Victor said, was the first to break out and the last stage the longest in the World Anti-Fascist War, resulting in over 35 million Chinese military and civilian casualties. How important is the Chinese sacrifice to the defeat of Japanese fascism and supporting other fronts in Europe and Asia? I know this is also personal for you, right?
Well, it is. I wouldn't be here today had my grandfather not successfully escaped Shanghai when the Japanese invaded Shanghai in August 1937. Japanese aggression touches myself and my family deeply, and the memory of the resistance to Japanese aggression, I think, is something that has been passed down through the generations in my family as important lessons. As Victor mentioned, these are lessons firstly about the need for nations to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And particularly for China to recover from 100 years of weakness and humiliation, and to re-establish itself as a strong, independent, sovereign nation and a civilization on Earth. That's the first thing that I think it does. The second thing I think it does is remind everybody that the resistance to the Japanese aggression and Japanese fascism is something that can never be forgotten, because there are always forces that seek to rejuvenate those kinds of political ideologies from time to time, and to seek to pursue aggression across the world. And just remembering the fact that these things are possible, I think firstly keeps everybody on their toes. And lastly, I think it really does behove nations and national leaders to put their minds to not only ensuring that their nations can stand on their own 2 feet, but to think hard about how they can develop the institutions that are necessary for maintaining peace within their own region and also contribute to peace globally. And that is something that I think is sorely missing today. I mean, our earlier discussion on NATO is proof positive of that, where European leaders have demonstrated a singular incapacity to think seriously about building towards a peace and a lasting peace in Europe, but instead run around with rhetoric that is nothing more than warmongering rhetoric. China's experience through its own battles, I think, tells us of the need to be able to defend yourself and to be able to work with others to build that mesh network, if you will, that aligns the interests of countries in peace and prosperity. And I hope that at this current time, at this very fragile time in the world, that fundamental lesson about peacemaking in a positive sense is taken on board by leaders across the globe.
Right. Yiwei, if you take a look at this arrangement, it not only highlights China's solemn commemoration of the victory in the war, but also demonstrates the country's commitment to fulfilling international obligations and safeguarding world peace, according to one of the defense officials from China. If you look at today, we had this brief war, India, Pakistan, of course, Gaza, and Iran, US, Israel, Ukraine, Russia. China appears as the only big power, strongly advocating for respecting UN Charter, UN principles, as well as international law. I mean, why is that important to this world?
Well, of course, China and Russia celebrate the victory of the World War II and the military parade in Moscow in May 9th and then September 3rd in Beijing, which send very clear signals that Russia and China actually sacrifice most, more than 20 million of the casualties in the Europeans and Asians battlefield. We are the winner of the World War II. We are the defender of the UN system. The West, UN challenge of the UN authority, including Taiwan resolution of 2758, in the name of the rule-based international order, and also punish Russia and treat Russia again and again at the NATO expansion. Actually, Russia is the winner, it's not the loser of Cold War. So this is a very important signals. And go beyond that, I visited the UNESCO headquarters. There's a mantra and written in the constitution of the UNESCO that the wars, we can trace the reason of the mindset of the people. So we need to build the peace through the minds of the human beings. So that's the reason as President Xi Jinping put forward 3 initiatives and also Committee of the Shared Future. I think we should learn enough lessons from the World War II and not repeat the tragedy in world history. The European Union are founded on the never fight again, but it's very successful. That's Renmin, European Union, the Nobel Peace Prize winner of 2014. However, the European neighbors, they cannot make peace, like today's Ukraine, even before the Kosovo and Georgia. So how can we turn into the lessons from the regional to global? I think that's basically the Committee of Shared Future indicates.
Yeah, Glenn, what do you think of like European countries in terms of, the World War II, avoiding repetition of another world war?
Well, I think a key problem is that for people, when the old generation passes away, they forget the horrors of war. So it appears that each generation seems to some extent condemned to repeat these difficult lessons. But I think in Europe, the key problem is walked away a bit from the discussion about what actually creates peace. Because in the international system, when you have competition, a security competition between states, the real way you usually pursue peace is through indivisible security. That is, ensure that one side doesn't expand its security at the expense of others. Now, I do think that China has been very good at this area, that is looking for win-win solutions, because once you go into only looking at security as zero-sum, you're going to have security competition and you're going to have wars. Again, the EU was formed as a peace project, learnings from its history after World War II. But that Europe is very gone now. The whole coal and steel, I don't see this existing anymore. Now they're talking about geopolitical EU.
Well, and, Glenn, we have to stop there. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Thank you for being with us. I'm Shi Qianduo. See you next time.